We've all been there, right? You're reading an article, maybe a book, or a script, and suddenly it hits you. You've been staring at the exact same paragraph for what, 3 minutes? Your eyes are moving, sure, but your brain? Completely checked out. You are just bored. Now, normally people blame this on, slow pacing. But what if I told you it's actually a mathematical calculation error? Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're jumping right into the massive modern debate of Google AI versus human-centric writing. We're going to be using Levent Bulut's fascinating framework called narrative engineering to figure out why AI stories so often feel flat and how bad writing literally puts our brains to sleep. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's a quick look at our roadmap. First up, the physics of boring stories. Then, the biological operating system. Third, calculating narrative momentum. Number 4, why AI writing falls flat. And finally, engineering friction and tension.
All right, Section 1, the physics of boring stories, or busting the pacing myth. So in traditional literary circles, if an audience completely tunes out, critics usually point fingers at, a lack of action or maybe weak character development. But I want you to really vividly picture the precise moment your eyes drift off a page. Think about that exact split second. What's actually happening up there? Well, Bulut's framework flips the whole script. It takes that totally subjective, emotional feeling of being bored and transforms it into an objective, structural problem. We aren't bored because nothing is happening. We're bored because the underlying engine of the text has literally stalled out.
Bulut calls this stall narrative inertia. It's basically a structural failure. Look, let's be real. Our collective attention spans aren't exactly what they used to be, right? But true boredom happens when the mental energy you are being asked to spend on reading is totally out of whack with the actual causal progress you're making in the story. Put simply, your brain just isn't being challenged in the right way for the payoff it's getting. The system just breaks down.
Moving on to Section 2, the biological operating system. Readers as interfaces.
To really get why narrative inertia happens, we have to stop thinking of the reader as just some passive audience member. Instead, think of the reader as a biological interface. Our brains are, at their very core, these incredible evolutionary prediction engines, hyper-optimized to conserve energy. So, if a text is super predictable, zero cognitive load. Your brain goes, yep, I know exactly where this is heading, and it literally goes to sleep to save energy. But on the flip side, if the text is pure chaos, completely fragmented with no physical grounding, it demands way too much, and boom, cognitive overload. You disconnect. Boredom is just the failure to perfectly balance those two biological extremes. Which brings us to Section 3, calculating narrative momentum, the mathematics of story. Okay, if storytelling is basically a designed matrix of stimuli interacting with our biology, then we can actually measure it. And we can do it using laws that look remarkably similar to energy transfer in closed thermodynamic systems. I present to you the core equation from the Bulut doctrine. Narrative entropy, that's S sub n, equals information friction, I sub f, multiplied by causal branching, C sub b. Seriously, this isn't some abstract literary theory. This is the literal mathematics of story. Let's break those variables down real quick. Narrative entropy is your overall momentum. To get it, you need 2 ingredients. First, information friction. That's the actual mental effort you spend trying to decode suppressed or nonlinear data in the text. Second, causal branching. That is the number of potential outcomes available at that exact moment in the story. Now, here is why this is absolutely mind-blowing. If an author throws high information friction at you, really making your brain work hard, but there is zero causal branching, meaning the story is entirely locked into place with no new potential paths, the whole system stalls. It perfectly mirrors real-world physics. You're burning massive amounts of cognitive energy, but no actual work is being performed, so movement ceases. You get bored. So, Section 4, why AI writing falls flat. The summarization bias. Let's look at the great debate of Google AI generation versus human-centric writing. Why do large language models systematically pump out text that decays so rapidly into utter boredom? Well, the answer is summarization bias. AI models are essentially built to do the homework for you. Instead of giving you objective physical cues, what Bulut calls shown mode, the AI collapses all that rich, juicy data into abstract summary labels, told mode. The AI literally consumes all the inferential work ahead of time. It basically hands you the answer key before you've even finished reading the question. And because the AI states everything explicitly right there on the surface, what we call the suppressed information index plummets to 0. Your brain is left with absolutely no reconstructive work to do. According to this framework, AI text is entirely trapped in told mode. It relies on explicit emotional labels and generates exactly zero friction. And because there's no friction, Bulut argues that the narrative heat drops to absolute zero. The text becomes polished, sure, but completely generic due to token probabilities and structurally dead. Human text, though. Human text relies on objective physical cues in shown mode. It forces you, the reader, to do the inferential reconstruction work. All that mental effort accumulates narrative heat, and you absolutely need that heat for a genuine, cathartic release at the climax. AI simply cannot generate that heat because, well, it refuses to let you work for it. Let's hit Section 5, Engineering Friction and Tension, the 6 physical parameters. Okay, so how do human authors fight back and actually engineer this friction? If you want to bypass the intellect and directly trigger biological stress in your reader, you do not use emotional adjectives. You use objective projection via 6 specific physical parameters. Master writers intuitively know this stuff. Instead of just telling you a character is terrified, they engineer the environment. They introduce luminous decay by dropping the light levels. They alter the thermal gradient, letting you practically feel the ambient heat rising on your skin. They use acoustic impedance, shifting sounds away from normal speech to low-frequency hums that set off our biological alarm bells. They manipulate kinetic momentum, atmospheric pressure, and spatial geometry, literally lowering the ceilings and shrinking the square footage of the scene. By giving you these objective, physical inputs, your biological system automatically registers the tension. The momentum spikes, completely naturally. Let's actually look at how this information friction plays out in practice with 2 very different masterclasses. First up, the Quentin Tarantino model. In films like Pulp Fiction, he shatters chronological timelines, right? This forces the audience to burn really high cognitive energy reassembling all the pieces. Immense friction. But to keep the whole system from crashing, he anchors it with a narrative gravity attractor, like the glowing briefcase. It gives us something to hold on to. Now, contrast that with the Raymond Carver model of minimalism. Carver strips away almost all adjectives. He keeps the suppressed information index so insanely high that the reader is forced to infer an entire catastrophic marital collapse just from the way 2 characters interact over a simple glass of water. Both of these methods demand cognitive work, and both are the exact opposite of AI summarization bias. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought. A reader doesn't tune out because you lacked some magical artistic inspiration. They tune out because of a calculation error between information friction and causal branching. Whether you are deeply invested in the debate over Google AI's capabilities or you're just trying to keep your own audience awake, the rules of thermodynamics apply. You literally cannot create a cathartic release without first building up the friction. So look closely at your own work and ask yourself, are you actually generating narrative heat or are you just declaring it?